Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Alex Diamond. I'm Emersion's marketing manager. For those who aren't aware, Emersion is a business automation and billing platform for MSPs, telcos, and utility companies. We help companies to engage with their customers, automate manual processes, integrate their systems, and ultimately collect payment. If you do have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat. We'll also be opening the floor up to questions at the end of this webinar. You don't need to be an Emersion customer to get value out of this webinar, but some of the steps will obviously be easier to implement if you are a customer. And if you would like to arrange a demonstration, then please get in touch with us after the webinar. So here are the 5 steps that businesses can take to thrive in an economic downturn. The first is to get your house in order. And what I mean by this is all of the tasks that you put off doing, all of the things that you've been saving for a rainy day. Well, it's not raining at the moment, but most people aren't going outside. So this is the time to do that. This is the time to do all of those things that you've been putting off doing. We've got some suggestions on how to approach this. So for starters, you'd want to be making sure that you're talking to your customers. So check in and see how they're doing. Most companies spend the majority of their time working with their key accounts and also the squeaky wheels, the customers who are likely to ring up and in cases complain, but they're neglecting the hidden majority. And those are the customers that are going along, they're using your services, they're hopefully getting some value out of it, but you don't really hear that much from them. Now's the time to check in with those accounts and see how they're doing and see if there is anything that you can be doing to help. It's also a time to have some difficult conversations. We are about to enter an economic downturn. You want to be aware of if your customers are in an at-risk industry, and if they are, have a conversation about how you can manage that. If they're not in an at-risk industry, you want to understand if their customers are in at-risk industries. And what I mean by at-risk industries in this instance are hospitality, travel, tourism, and higher education have been particularly hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. If it does look like they're going to have difficulty payment, then it might be worth migrating them onto a payment plan or payment extension. And if you are doing that, and if you are offering that to them, then you'll want to be trying to migrate them onto direct debit if possible. Try and extend contract terms if possible as well. So, if you are helping someone out with payments, you want to be making sure you can get something in return, and extending the contract length is one way of doing that that's not really going to affect their cash flow, but it's going to look really good on your balance sheets. Slow paying customers are one of the biggest threats to cash flows that many customers face. So you want to make sure that you are trying to do everything you can to get your customers to pay quickly. And so migrating onto direct debit is a great way of doing that. You want to be speaking to your accountant. You want to be working out what the state of your cash flow is. What's your risk portfolio? How much is owing from various customers and what amounts at risk? An understanding of what your credit terms are and how they can be reined in. So if you're sending overdue reminders after 30 days or after 45 days, there's really not much reason to be doing that. So you want to be tightening that up and putting those reminders, having them go out at 7 days. Have a contingency plan in place for if your customers do go under. We are about to enter a recession and there will be businesses that go under. So you want to make sure that you're covered if that does happen. Also speak to a lawyer. You want to understand that your contracts are enforceable. So the first step is to make sure you have contracts and make sure that they're enforceable. Are there ways of making your contracts better? What happens if a customer goes under? Are you able to secure priority payments? And can you negotiate for favorable payment terms if you are working with customers who are in at-risk industries? Also, you want to be making sure that you're investing in the right system. So Emersion is a business automation and billing platform, and we do make it a lot easier to run your business. We can help with business automation, billing, and systems integration. Even small and medium-sized businesses who use Emersion should be able to save about 40 hours of manual work each and every month from using our system. If you've struggled with work-life balance in the past, then this is a really good time to change that. It's time to get your database up to date. It's time to fix your website. Do everything you can so that when we're back to some form of normalcy, you are in a stronger position than ever. Manage your spend. So what we're talking about here is really finding ways of reducing your spend. At the moment, there are a lot of companies who are concerned about cash flow, and that's money in as well as money out. Companies often waste money without really thinking about it, and it's time to rein in that spending. So here are some ways to reduce spend. One thing that comes to mind is rarely used software, and there are a lot of companies who might be paying for software subscriptions, but aren't using them to their fullest potential. Did you know that 38% of software is rarely or never used? Some main offenders here are things like Camtasia Studio, which is used by less than 30% of the organizations who buy licenses for it. But even Office 365, there are about 8% of Office licenses that don't actually get used. And this costs companies from unused software licenses, not just Office, but across the board, around $373 per year per desktop. So if you are an MSP, then this is something that you can also think about, can you perform a audit of your client's software and work out where they could be getting some money back? It's a way of adding value to your customers as well. You also want to be thinking about fees. So we did a quick roundup of some of the payment gateways and payment providers in Australia, and they're charging fees of between 1% to, in some cases, 3.6% for international transactions. But just having a look at one of the cheaper providers and one of the sort of mid-tier to more expensive providers, there's a difference of 1% to 2.75%. And if you just do some napkin math for a business with $100,000 of revenue and $100 is the average transaction size, what you'll see is that there's almost a $2,000 difference in the fees that are charged. Now, most businesses will have a lot more revenue than $100,000. If you're a telco, your average transaction size is going to be smaller than $100. So the difference in fees could be astronomical. And it might be worth looking at different payment gateways and payment providers. Now, most organizations will have trouble switching payment providers because of the way that the payment providers store their data. With something like Emersion, we support multiple payment gateways and we make it easy to switch payment gateways as well. So, if you're in a situation where your payment merchant decides to up the fees that they're charging, it's easy to migrate to another provider. The other thing that we can help with is payment routing. So if there's a payment provider that's offering 1% flat fees, and there's a payment provider that's offering, say, 2.75% for credit card, but 0.7% for EFT transactions, you can actually route the payments through both providers. So the credit card providers can go through payment provider 1 at 1%, and the EFT transactions can go through payment provider 2 at 0.7%. And this ensures that you're getting the lowest possible fees at all times. Another area to think about is suppliers. So what you'll be wanting to do as suppliers is check in and see if they can sort of offer some flexible and better payment terms. And it's also an opportunity to consolidate suppliers. Not only does this give you some leverage for negotiating better payment terms, but it also means that you might get volume discounts from supplying more data or supplying more voice services to your customers through the one provider. It's also worth thinking about auditing usage. Usage-based billing is incredibly difficult, and it's something that your suppliers will sometimes get wrong. If this happens, then most companies are unaware of this. So what you can do is use a system like Emersion, use our supplier audit functionality to work out if you have been overcharged. And this will save most companies hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on who their suppliers are and how much usage they have. Most people are working from home at the moment, and this is going to have a big impact on rents. There are enterprise software giants like Facebook, Square, Twitter, who have said that after the COVID-19 pandemic, their clients can still continue to work from home. So, office rental markets will be affected as well. We're expecting a 10% drop in rent for Melbourne and Sydney, with prime office rents set to fall by 20%. And as a response to this, agents are offering a 50% increase in rental incentives. If your lease is expiring, then it's definitely worth talking to your agent and seeing if you can secure a better rental deal. Even if your lease isn't expiring, it's still definitely worth checking in and seeing if there's anything that they can offer you. The other area I want to talk about is staff. So not necessarily reducing staff, but making sure that the time that they spend is focused on high value work to your organization. And most businesses are surprised by the amount of time that their staff would spend on fully automatable tasks. IT Chronicles have put together some facts surrounding this, and they've actually worked out that it's about 30% of the year that most administrative staff members will spend doing fully automatable tasks, or 552 hours. And so, which really leads us to our next step, which is to integrate and automate. You want to be automating as much of that manual work as possible and making sure that your staff are focused on higher value work. Business automation initiatives are one of the best things your business can be doing. They generate a 30 to 200% ROI in their first year alone. Some of the ways that Emersion can start to automate your work is through synchronizing data. So Emersion integrates to over 70 vendors in Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore. And these include enterprise software platforms like Salesforce, ConnectWise, and Xero. And what we do is it means that your staff won't have to enter the same data into different systems. It also means that your staff will be able to work out of their preferred system. So not only are you saving time by synchronizing data, but you're making it so that staff can use their preferred system. And by using their preferred system, they're also able to know with surety that the data that they're editing and the data that they're making decisions based off of is reliable. So you've got accurate data across your organization, and it doesn't matter which platform your staff members are using to access it. Another area is usage mediation and rating. And what we mean by this is really calculating charges for, say, mobile or internet services. And this can get really tricky. Through a system like Emersion, we integrate directly to your suppliers, and we're able to calculate usage because of that. And it takes out a lot of the manual work involved. Payment processing and collections is another area where we really shine. So with Emersion, this process becomes set and forget. Your customers enter in subscription payment details, the usage gets calculated automatically, an invoice goes out, a charge occurs, the charge gets reconciled back against their account, and there's really no work involved from your staff members. So it takes a process that, can take 2 to 3 days, depending on the size of your organization, to something that really there's no work involved in at all. We also help with the collection side of things as well. So for instance, if a transaction gets declined, if a customer's credit card is expiring, you can send out notifications based on this. And if for any reason they still haven't made a payment after several notifications, you can also send out a notification to one of your staff members to just check in, follow up, and see what's happening there. Provisioning and order management. Now, for those of you who aren't from the telco industry, provisioning is the process of getting services activated and available for use by your customers. Provisioning automation is the key to selling voice services at a profit. Not only does it save a lot of work, but it also results in a faster turnaround for your customer, and there's less chance that something can go wrong. The final area that I'd like to talk about is reporting and data analysis. So you don't want to manually have to report on what's happening in your business. And it's an area that some companies will employ administrative people solely for this purpose. Emersion has 400 built-in reports, and they can report on all aspects of your business, from profitability and margin analysis through to supplier audit, IP&D, data retention. There's a whole heap of reports that we've got built in. And what this means is that if there are reports that you're having to regularly schedule and schedule at regular intervals, these reports can be sent off to the people who need them, say on a Friday or on a monthly basis, and there's really no work involved there. So you're able to make really accurate decisions based on the state of your business. Which leads us to customer experience. So I just want to run through a quick few stats, but customer experience is something that most businesses should be really concerned with at the moment. There is going to be an impact from the COVID-19 pandemic, and there are going to be people looking for every way possible to conserve cash. If they're not getting value from your business, then they may be looking around for new suppliers. You want to be aware that attracting a new customer is more expensive than retaining a current one. Most businesses overestimate their customer experience. So 80% of companies rank their customer experience as superior, but only 8% of their clientele are giving them the same ranking. And 1 in 26 customers complains before switching providers. So what this tells you is that in most instances, people are going to switch without letting you know. And if you do get a complaint or something like that, it's something that you should really be thankful for and should act on. But you really should also be looking at ways of making customer experience a competitive advantage for your business. So there are actually some ways that automation can help to improve customer experience. The first one is there's less time waiting. So through self-service portals and things like that, it means that your customers can access the information they need without having to rely on your staff. And this also means that there's greater staff availability for when they do end up having to contact them. You've got more standardized processes, and that can lead to a faster ordering time. 88% of customers expect a brand to have a self-service portal, and Emersion has 3. We have a sign-up portal, an activation portal, and an end-user portal. The sign-up portal is for activating new services online. So your customers can, or a customer can sign up for a mobile phone plan or an internet plan without having to be a customer beforehand. Activation portal is for 2-step activation processes. So for instance, ordering a mobile phone and then having the SIM card sent out and having to activate that SIM card after the fact. And the end user portal is where your customers can manage their account details, update payment information. They can even report on usage, view their invoices, and lodge support tickets. Now, these portals can work in tandem with each other. So for instance, if you get a new customer signing up through the sign up portal, they then would enter their details and get a login for the end user portal, which means that they can go from becoming a new customer to managing their account without having to have any interaction with your staff. And that's a win-win for a number of reasons. It provides a better experience for the customer, there's more flexibility there, but it also means that your margins improve and there's less work for your staff as well. We want to think about ways of improving customer experience by adding more value to them. So if you're an MSP and you're not selling voice and data, then you definitely should be thinking about it. It's something that most MSPs do. Emersion makes this incredibly easy. Security is another area that a lot of MSPs are branching out into, and that's a huge area of growth, either through becoming a managed security service provider or partnering with one. And software is another area where you can branch out. So for instance, selling Office 365 subscriptions. We've got functionality that makes selling Office 365 and voice and data a lot easier, but it also changes your value proposition to your customers. So when you start selling voice and data, you go from being just the IT provider to an IT and communications provider. And that increases stickiness with a customer and means that they're going to be less likely to churn and they'll see you in a different light. You want to also be thinking about, is there a possibility of adding more sales channels? Is there a way of selling through your customers? If you're selling services that your customers could be selling, then it might be worth thinking about, is there an opportunity here to become a wholesaler? If you're selling services that other affiliated businesses could be selling, is there an opportunity to expand your sales force by having someone sell products on your behalf? Emersion has functionality to help with wholesale and multi-tier billing, and also calculating the charges for agents and commissions. So we make becoming a wholesaler or expanding your sales team through agents and commissions easy. And then the final thing to think about is being visible. And what I mean by that is to continue to communicate throughout the pandemic. So the first thing to think about is really changing your messaging. The worst thing you can be doing right now is to just continue as if nothing's happening. Things have changed, things are different, and your approach needs to change accordingly. You also want to make sure that you're keeping communicating. You want to stay top of mind. Write blog posts, host webinars, email your customers, segment your marketing out into different materials. So you really want to be making sure that you're present and visible in the market and you haven't gone to ground. It's also a good time to test new channels. Because things have changed, your marketing approach needs to change as well. Just 17% of the MSP 501, and these are some of the biggest MSPs in the world, spend more than 4% of their revenue on marketing. If you look at other industries, they're spending around 7 to 8% of their revenue on marketing. So there's a huge underspend in the MSP space on marketing, and that's a huge opportunity. If you look at where MSPs in particular are marketing, most of them are focusing on old school marketing methods. So networking, email blasts, cold calling. But pay-per-click ads, which in other industries would have a huge utilization rate, are relatively low on the agenda. Worth having a read of the MSP 501 and just going a bit more in depth into here. One of the firms, eNodes, reported that 50% of their leads were coming from pay-per-click ads. So it's definitely, something to try. Quote from Theodore Roosevelt, which is that, the only man who never makes mistakes is the man who never does anything. And so you definitely should be trying new things here. But if you're trying new things, you want to make sure that you're setting goals. You want to make sure that they're smart goals. So what I mean by that is, are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable, results driven, and timely? If you are setting goals, make sure that you write them down. And what this does is it really sets a hypothesis in place. What was I trying to achieve? And then when you go back and look at the metrics, you can work out if you achieve that. You want to make sure that you're measuring with reporting as well. So as I said earlier, Emersion provides 400 reports that can give you an insight into the state of your business. If you are doing marketing materials and trying new marketing methods, then you want to also make sure that you're failing fast. So, trying something, if it's not working, changing it. And if it is working, you want to make sure that you're optimizing it. You want to make sure that you're continuing to try to get better. So these are really the 5 steps to maintain cash flow in an economic downturn. Just a quick recap, step 1 is getting your house in order. So speaking with your customers, speaking with an accountant, speaking with a finance person, putting the right systems in place. Step 2 is managing your spend. Is there any software that you're not using? Are you getting charged a lot through your fees? Can you consolidate suppliers? Are your staff spending their time wisely? Integrate and automate. Make sure you're automating as much of your business as possible, which frees up your staff to focus on higher value tasks. Improve customer experience. Make sure that your customers aren't churning. Do everything you can to provide a better customer experience and be visible. Keep marketing, keep communicating throughout the pandemic. And that's going to put you in a really good step to thrive and come out on top at the end of the COVID-19 pandemic and in the years going forward.